CNN News.
Yeah, this story is going to be very tough because I'm not sure if I even should be talking about this at all.
Right.
But I talked to you, I talked to Indy, and I think it might be good, at least for catharsis for me in terms of what happened.
Yeah.
But also, I think this is, again, I think this is important to kind of share the reality. And again, for me, this is not my job. This is more or less volunteer for me. So the fact that this event affected my job, I think is very scary, honestly. So I'll get into the details because people are like, what's going on? So
yeah,
what happened was, maybe about a couple weeks or so ago at this point, I wrote a tweet about Charlie Kirk. Actually pull up the tweet. This was the tweet that I posted on Twitter. So I said, my school's flags were half-mast yesterday because of Charlie Kirk. Yet there are thousands of children who die every day without that honor. This is what I choose to grieve, not for some right-wing political puppet. This country is so twisted and sick. So
where's the lie?
That's what I wrote.
Ain't no fucking lie. Ain't no fucking lie there. And y'all know it.
So
I don't care how you feel about whatever.
So I posted that 2 weeks ago. Thought nothing of it.
Right.
Then last Thursday afternoon, my principal at my school texted me and was like, can I talk to you when you have a chance?
You got called to principal office? Ooh.
Yes. So I met with him after school and he told me basically that he didn't say this tweet, but given the content, I knew was this tweet. He said that someone called it in from within the district saying that now the tweet, because I'm going to give a shout out to my principal because he was actually very cool about it.
Yeah.
Because he kind of heard the details of the tweet and he was basically like, well,
sounds about right.
What's wrong with it?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
He didn't say that, but it was like, it was the idea of like, look, it's his personal account. It really wasn't anything. So what do you want to be done? And I guess the person was just like, yeah,
I don't know.
But given that I am a teacher within DC public schools,
trial by combat wasn't offered, you know,
if other people saw that knowing who I am, then it could be construed, especially given at that time, it could have been construed as a hot topic issue. Yeah. So yeah, fortunately, you know, as I said, my principal was very cool about it. He was like, yeah, I mean, obviously given the content and given the temperature of the country right now, it's best, now granted it's a personal account, but as an employee of the district, you should be careful with what you tweet. So, and I told him, and funny enough, I had a conversation with my mother over that weekend prior, who I'm not sure if she saw that tweet, but she saw a few of my tweets on Facebook, because some of my tweets I do post on Instagram.
Right.
That also go through Facebook. She is on Facebook and she never looks at anything that I post really, but for some reason she saw what I posted is, I think, around Charlie Kirk because I was angry about it. And she basically, so when I was talking to her over the weekend, she was like, I understand how you're feeling. That being said, I don't want anyone to hurt you for your content. So out of respect of my principal and my mother, I deleted the tweet. But I saved it. That's why
it's still here. I got it. Fucking I'll tweet it for you. Fuck. Say something to me. I don't give a shit. You know,
but
they can't fire me.
it did make me think about the reach that I do have in terms of how, funny enough, and those of you who follow me know, I've written way more spicier tweets than that.
Right. Like,
and at this point, it hasn't been an issue. Although I figured at some point this was going to happen. I just didn't think it was going to happen over something like this tweet, where while I deleted the tweet, I don't think the content of what I said, I very much stand up with my chest. And I would say it again. And I did. And I stand by what I said. And the reason why I stand by what I said, and this is kind of relates to this, a couple of weeks ago, I teach preschool kids. They're new to my school. We had to do an active shooter drill. Now, I knew about the shooter drill. I totally forgot to tell this to my families, especially those who had their children in preschool prior to this, in like a private preschool. They don't do the shooter drills before. So the idea of them all of a sudden hearing, oh, there's an active shooter drill, concerned some of them, and rightly so. The thing was, I forgot to tell them beforehand because I completely forgot. But then, like, once we had it, I kind of consider it a fire drill at this point. It was just all hot.
Yeah.
But then I got word from one of my parents that a couple of our parents were concerned about it. And obviously, knowing their point of view, I immediately sent an email and basically said, I'm sorry.
Might be.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I didn't communicate this to you, but this, obviously, and like, so it was fine. Most of my families didn't notice, and to be fair, their children didn't notice, or they shared it. It was like, oh, we had this, but none of them were scared or anything like that. But it did make me think about this in terms of something that Charlie Kirk said. And this is and I said this to you in Indy, but I think in terms of, the rhetoric that he spouted off in the guise of Christianity is what I had a huge issue with. And the thing, especially in regarding this, that he said that really bothered me was, in order to and I'm paraphrasing what he said, but he said, in order for the Second Amendment to be, the loss of life is unfortunate, but we need our guns. Essentially, is what we're saying. Is essentially what he said. So, and a lot of people, were like, "Oh, well, here's the thing." To me, and you could say this is a nuanced conversation, not to me, because to me, how I interpret unfortunate means exposable.
Yeah.
That if it were me that lost his life over protecting my students, he's no longer here. So he can't defend what he said. But that's kind of how I interpreted what he said. So it's the idea of like, look, if a few children die, it's unfortunate, meaning it's bad, but that's the attitude that it seemed flippant to me. And for a person who has committed my life in my career to teach, but now with the added thing of protect of my students in the event that something happens to them in that way, I have to protect them. And a couple of years ago, like I was having this conversation with a parent, and the parent was like, well, I appreciate your stance on protecting our kids, but who's going to protect you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, So for me, it's the idea of like, look, and again, I feel like I shouldn't have to preface any conversation with this. Obviously, with what happened with Charlie, like, I do not wish that on anyone, but that's the difference. I do not wish for anything that happened to him to happen to anyone in this country, even people I don't like. And therein, that's the problem to me. For him, it was like, seemingly, oh, sure. I mean, it's bad that it happens, but it happens. So, because we have the Second Amendment and all that.
You see, I'm one of those lefties that you go far enough left, you get your gun back. You know what my answer? Deal with the underlying fucking issues of the violence. How about that? Like, never wants to talk about that shit, Like, because God forbid,
Right. So for me, it was the idea of, and that's why I wrote that tweet, because in part, because mostly it was like, okay, here's an influencer. Now, granted, and well, an influencer whose friends were
right.
in the White House.
Well,
Which to me, it happens on both sides, essentially. So whatever. Charlie Kirk was not special in that, because we see that on the liberal side as well. But we're not giving like influencers like essentially like a politician's treatment of half-mast flags.
Right.
When we don't give children that honor. There are children who are dead by gun violence, hell, probably every week at this point.
That's what I found crazy. You're a pre-K teacher advocating for the life of other children as opposed to that of a podcaster. Like, if it's the Titanic and it's going down, the children get on the lifeboat first, is what I remember.
Right.
Like, and you're getting reprimanded. It's insane. First of all, for anyone to try to do that over a fucking political take.
Let's clarify. I didn't get reprimanded for it because my principal did not.
Yeah,
I didn't get disciplined for it. It was just like,
you got a warning.
I essentially. So and even then it was kind of, I wouldn't even call it a warning. He was just be careful. Know. So
I got like, called. Deal with it.
Right. So it was me who decided to take the tweet down out of respect to him, as I said, and my mother.
Whoever gave the call, thanks for watching. Appreciate you. Glad you're here.
I'm sure they're not watching. Again, it was on Twitter, so they probably saw me. But
you never know. We're on Twitter too. Whatever. Like, appreciate you. Hope you're learning some stuff.
Right. But either way, I'm saying this with some fear and trepidation. But at the same time, we talked about Asada Shakur in an earlier segment.
Right.
And how she led in her truth. And what I said was the truth. Because the reality is, young children in this country are considered, in my mind, the least of these. And my job is to be a voice for them because they're too young to have that voice. They're not listened to. We say we care about children, but we don't, especially if they're under the age of 5, because we consider them to be like empty vessels that need to be pouring into the knowledge that they need to know. And for me, having been in the field for now over 20 years, and I could say this for any child, regardless of where they're from, they know way more than we give them credit for. It's just that we don't give them the platform to allow them to share what they know. We always assume like you don't know anything when they know something. And unfortunately for some, they may know the wrong thing or the more traumatic thing that will be affecting their life if people like me and others don't kind of step in and kind of redeem some of that. But I think it's the idea of, one, I think, and I don't necessarily think about this because I only have about 4,000 subscribers, 4,000 followers on Twitter or whatever. So I don't think, I'd never consider me having that kind of reach.
Well, we thought it could have been automated systems looking stuff. I mean, there's a lot of factors there.
Like, but regardless, it's just the idea, for me, at least in this case, people are watching me, or at least paying attention to what I say. So whether or not, like, it's, again, for me, it's not like I'm in this space where I do media that I can use this for my betterment, in a sense, because I can make a lot, if I was doing this full time, make a lot of noise about it, bring attention to it, get the followers and the clicks, and
play,
the clout off of it. But for me, it's the opposite, because I can't do that. Because the more attention I get, that affects my job.
Yeah, there's a
my real job that pays my bills. So, the very thing that I came into this space for, to elevate, I've been essentially censored because of a concern over a podcaster over the lives of children. And so, and I didn't want to do this, but I made my page private. So, so only people that follow me is able to see what I tweet.
Yeah, pretty normal. Plenty of journalists that do that.
Right, but that almost kind of defeats the purpose of Twitter. Is the idea of, you want your stuff to be seen. You want your stuff to get out there, to spread truth, whatever, how you interpret it. We live in the United States, so there's a million versions of the truth out there, or more.
Well, maybe it'll be a temporary thing,
I think, I think for now it probably will be temporary, but I'm not sure if I'll make it. I'm not going to make it public anytime soon. And honestly, I've just been so, I wouldn't say upset about it, but I definitely feel like I've gotten my wings clipped, from this experience. So I'm definitely not going to make it public again for a while. So, but we'll see how I feel with each passing day. But I did want to kind of share that, I think, because it does, and I think a couple of you said, that's an infringement of free speech or whatever, which you're right.
Yeah.
But the reality is, speech is not free.
Yeah.
Not for us. It's not. It's like, and again, think about who wrote the Constitution. It wasn't me. It wasn't like people like me. Like, back in the day, like, my ancestors were considered property. We basically, we weren't allowed to say anything. We were worse than dogs. So it was rich white men who said we had the power of free speech. And that's what someone like Charlie Kirk represented, because he was adjacent to the elites.
American bullshit.
So he felt, and rightly so, that I have the power to say whatever I want, and no one's going to necessarily check me on it. And the problem is, that kind of privilege is not applied fairly to everybody else. And so for someone like me, it's like, fortunately, it didn't cost me anything, at least right now. But for other people, as we saw, it has. And so, and I think the reality is, obviously, like, there's speech, you are allowed to say it, but there are consequences of you. And for me, in this case, this was my consequence. That somebody was concerned, or however you want to interpret it.
Right.
And, felt a way about it, or concerned about it. And maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure if I totally understand it, but especially with the content of the tweet. But what I do understand is that it's a different world now, especially given this administration, how much they say they are for free speech when they're not. But, but the things that you could say or do, might be used against you. Now, fortunately, I consider this a warning shot, but but it's definitely has made me think twice about even being here, which I also shared with. I think I shared it as an indie for sure, because it's like, how can I expect to do something like this and have the wrong person say something in regards to stuff that I talk about, Israel, among other things, and have that affect my job? So, so it's kind of I'm in a very awkward position right now. So, but I mean the silver lining is it got attention, I guess.
Sure.
And someone's looking for me, I guess, but not necessarily in the way that I would have necessarily wanted it to go.
Well, it's like I've told you got good company, at least, like you have the same convictions as some of literally the most revered like thinkers of our time. You're in the mix of those who had to deal with the same kind of shit.
I mean,
like
I appreciate that. I don't necessarily look. Here's the thing. Like, to me, it was just a matter of my job.
Yeah.
Because it's true. Because I want my students and the children in general, to have the same equity in terms of how we think about them, in the same way that we think about the people in power. They deserve to be elevated. They deserve to be empowered to think beyond themselves. They deserve care. They deserve attending to. And we don't do that for them, at least all of the time. And that's my job, is to advocate for them. So if I pissed off the wrong person on account of that tweet, I'm sorry. But that's not going to dictate to me, at least right now, of how I continue to teach and how I will continue to advocate for my students and children in general. Like, I'm just, if anything, if I'm just kind of taking a little bit of a break, but be known, like, my job is that. My job is to elevate. My job is to educate. And so, again, I want my students and children to have that same recognition. Like, to me, their lives are not dismissive. Because, as I was saying to a parent, I think probably even yesterday. No, actually, it was my instructional coach. I was saying to her, like, because my kids are, the oldest is 5 right now, like, when they turn 18, so for them, that's within the next 15 years.
Right.
What is the world going to look like for them? Right? And it's like, we have to prepare them for the reality of what we're leaving for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that terrifies me.
Fuck yeah, it should.
Every day. Like, especially given how this administration is fucking up this country right now. And I can't imagine the Democrats doing anything to redeem or reclaim some of that. If anything, it's going to take decades to even get back to where we were prior to. And even that was not the best. That we were just barely running at minimum.
Yeah.
So the idea that we're going sub that and having to build back that up, and God knows if we do ever, like, this country is going to hell. And that's reality that my students will have to deal with. And they have to be prepared for that. And the idea for me is like, if they have to worry about like gun violence or any climate change or all these things that will affect upon their lives, then we're done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have no future. And I'm in the business, especially given my grade, to create futures. Like, my kids are not jaded with the world yet. Anything is possible for them, and I want them to hold that for as long as they can. But I know that if things continue as it is, their future is going to look very bleak. So it's my job right now to try and rectify some of that to the best of my ability. So again, while I deleted the tweet, I still stand by what I said. Because if Charlie's life was not dismissible, then it shouldn't be for me or anybody else. Because I value all life, no matter how irredeemable it is given your actions that you do when you're alive. And I want all people to have that liberation, ultimately. That's the difference. So, to me, it's the idea of my life is not disposable, or anyone's life. My life is valued. I deserve to live my life. And I want to create a world where we're able to. So
but that sounds like empathy. I don't know if anyone said you shouldn't. It sounds like a good thing to have.
Well, a certain person said that that's a new age type thing, and you know what? I thought about that.
There's a whole. I'll send you a video. I'll send you a video of why they're talking about that. There's reasons.
Yeah, but I was thinking about that too, and I think this is why he said something like that, and I think it relates to when we watched the Buckley Baldwin debate last week. I think I even said that then.
Yeah,
but I believe the reason why Charlie Kirk said that is because, as Baldwin said, we need to essentially, he was kind of talking about the idea of stepping into other people's reality.
Yeah. Humanizing people.
Because once you do that, right, because once you do that, once you look inside the reality of others who are different from you, that's where that empathy comes in. Like, that's when you start to understand who they are and who they are about and the reality of the things that they're about, that you might feel things here. That you feel like, oh, I have to take action on these things. And I think Charlie, in his way, and again, he's not here to defend himself, but my guess is his job was to kind of keep people within their individualistic silos so that they're able to continue to think the way that they're thinking. Like, it's the immigrants that's the problem. It's the trans people that's the problem. It's anybody but his buddies in government. And
yep.
So the idea of not having any empathy, I think he was really saying, I don't want people to connect the idea that it's not the issue between us, it's him and who he's connected to. And having us turn on them instead of each other. That's why I think he said that. Because God forbid if we kind of connect on issues that we align with on the left and the right, that there would be a true revolution of a working class kind, and rather against not of the partisan kind that we're beginning to see, or we've been seeing, but it's kind of wrapping up right now.
Yep. Pretty simple.
But
same shit we've been talking about. But I mean, speaking of censorship, monetary censorship is a thing, which is why YouTube has demonetized us. So you can scan that QR code on your screen, go to co-fi.com/IndieNewsNetwork, or as always in the description below. But if you can give monetarily because you're one of the poors like ourselves, do all the algorithm stuff every other channel asks you to. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, share the video. It is the only way it gets seen. And leave a comment. You know, tell us what you think. Otherwise, thanks for watching.